Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Mariah Samji, and I'm the Executive Director of IDEA, the Infill Development in Edmonton Association. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are on Treaty 6 territory within the Métis homeland and the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 4. We acknowledge this land as traditional territories of First Nations such as the Cree, Dene, Stoney, Anishinaabe, and Blackfoot. IDEA is a nonprofit organization created by industry and community members that saw that our neighborhoods were going through changes. The Edmonton housing stock was coming up for renewal, and our schools' mature neighborhoods were dwindling in population. The IDEA community came together to create vibrant communities that were successful and gave options to all different types of people. To follow along on the conversation on social media, make sure you follow the hashtags YegVote and YegInfo. I'm going to pass it over to Chelsea Jerzak, the president of IDEA, to continue the conversation.
Thank you so much, Mariah. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for day 3 of IDEA's municipal elections panels. So we've been having an action-packed week this week, and we're pleased to continue with our day 3 panel with candidates from 3 wards here with us today, Pihêsiwin, Anirniq, and Sipiwiyiniwak. We have joining us on the call Tim Cartmell, Guiscela Perez, Bev Esslinger, Sarah Hamilton, and Giselle General. So just a quick reminder that by infill, we're not just talking about skinny houses, but we're talking about the creative reuse or redevelopment of land or buildings in existing parts of the city. So with that definition in mind, I'm going to start asking our panelists some questions to get their take on infill. Also a reminder that IDEA does not endorse any candidates, and we have invited all candidates from each ward to participate here with us this week in our panel sessions. So the candidates that have chosen to attend here today have decided to do so because they have something to say to IDEA's members about infill and urban redevelopment, and we're pretty excited to hear what that is. So with no further ado, I will get started. Each candidate will have 1 minute to give an introduction about themselves, their ward, and why they're running. And then I'll ask a series of questions, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each subsequent question, and we will aim to have everything wrapped up at 1 o'clock sharp. So with no further ado, I am going to go to Tim Cartmell to kick us off. Tim, could you please tell us your name, your ward, and why you're running for City Council? You'll have 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you again to IDEA for the opportunity to share some thoughts today. My name is Tim Cartmell. I'm running for re-election in Ward Pihêsiwin. I was born and raised in Edmonton. I've lived in this corner of the city for roughly 25 years. My wife and I have raised our family here. I have a 30-year career in consulting engineering in the design and construction and management of building projects. And I think particularly key to this conversation, those projects include Peter Lougheed Hall at the University of Alberta, the Expo Center at Northlands, 3 different seniors lodges at the Greater Edmonton Foundation, and a number of multi-unit residential buildings scattered throughout the established neighborhoods of Edmonton. I can tell you from personal experience that the management, design, and construction and implementation of infill projects is extremely complicated. It's extremely interesting and extremely complex. And so I think that my collection of experience and education, particularly when it comes to infill discussions and projects, is particularly pertinent to a continued role on City Council. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll go to Guiscela Perez.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. I know it was a short notice, but thank you. So my name is Gisela Perez. I am running for City Council on Ward Pihêsiwin as well as Tim. And I'm originally from Mexico, and I have lived in different countries. I have lived in Germany and France, and now Edmonton has been my chosen home for the last 10 years. I'm one of you. I'm your neighbor. I care about our collective opportunities and challenges, and I think I bring a global perspective to everything I do. I'm a little more action oriented. I always have been involved in my communities, and I think one of my perspectives is to this election is about representation, resilience, and accountability. Right now, as a young immigrant woman, I don't feel represented in the current city council. And I know that a lot of the Edmontonians feel the same way. So I'm here to change that.
Thank you, Guiscela. Okay, next we will go to Bev Esslinger.
Thank you very much. My name is Bev Esslinger. I'm running in Ward Anirniq, which is Northwest Edmonton. I have the honor of serving for City Council for 2 terms in this area. My background is in nonprofit organizations that serve children and families. And I'm running for re-election because I think we're at a very pivotal time where we're going to have some challenging financial times, increasing social challenges. And I believe that my experience, my knowledge, and really my passion for people is going to help us into the next term. I think for me, the city is all about people and how do we build a city for people? Infill is part of that, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. So thank you very much for hosting that today.
Thank you for being here, Bev. Okay, next we'll go over to Sarah Hamilton. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Hamilton, and I'm the current city councilor for Ward 5, and I'm running for re-election in Sipiwiyiniwak, which is in southwest Edmonton. I was born and raised in Edmonton, and while I moved away briefly to go to school, I chose Edmonton as my long-term home and the place I want to raise my family. And that's because, and I'm running again for council because I want to build a city that the next generation will choose as their home. And to do that, we need experienced leadership on city council. The last 4 years have presented us with a number of formidable challenges, from the COVID-19 recovery to our changing fiscal environment with the provincial and federal government, to the long-term challenges of climate resiliency and energy efficiency, not to mention the challenge of having affordable housing in our city. If we're going to build a city that the next generation not only wants to stay in, but can be proud of, we need people that can help us navigate these challenges. And I look forward to working with IDEA to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Now we will wrap up this round of intros with Giselle General.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Giselle General, and I am running for Ward Sipiwiyiniwak, which is Edmonton West, all of the former Ward 5 and 6 neighborhoods from the former Ward 1. I am born and raised in the Philippines, lived in urban and rural places there, and my brother and I were orphan children brought over to Canada, and Edmonton became our home. I have a lot of experience with being on the ground, volunteering with community leagues, working in nonprofit, managing a family business, and I'm running for council because it's time to have more elected representatives that fights and has lived day-to-day experiences of everyday Edmontonians. Moving to Edmonton is a bit of a learning curve, finding a place that you can afford, making sure that you know how to navigate the city in all seasons and in a way that you can afford. And I think that sometimes these perspectives are missed when it comes to implementations and policy making. And I believe that my involvement or having a seat in council will help make sure that all decisions made at council will be as well implemented for everyday people.
Thank you, Giselle. Okay, so now we're going to start with the question round. So for our first question, we'll start with Guiscela. Guiscela, can you answer, please? What does your ideal neighborhood look and feel like? And this is your opportunity to tell us what your vision is for your ward.
Yeah, I think through COVID, we have learned that our neighbors and our communities are enjoying more and more in our parks and our common areas. And I think one of the parts that I think is very important is that to have well-maintained areas, so the services like the cutting the grasses and keeping the streets clean is very important. So everybody can feel they can go to the nearest part and enjoy it. But also safe communities is very important. And affordable housing is also a very good part of it. As Giselle was mentioning, as a new newcomer, it's very hard to understand how everything and how the city is divided and where you can find affordable housing and then the nice neighborhoods. So I think it is very important for us to have the options as citizens, and then if the city is expanding and growing at the same time, to have those options for all Edmontonians available for them.
Thank you so much. Okay, same question, and over to you, Bev. What does your ideal neighborhood look and feel like, and what is your vision for your ward? You have 2 minutes for this question.
Sorry, struggling with technology today. Thank you very much for the question. What is my ideal neighborhood? Well, my ideal neighborhood would be multi-generational, different types of housing. You would have great multimodals, would be bike paths, walking trails, great transit connectivity, and great roads. So it would be able for people to get in and around, but they need places to go. So we want to have green spaces, natural areas. We would also want to have local schools, playgrounds, and have that local coffee shop that we could all hang out at, or wine bar. So it'd be really self-contained, but it would be one for everyone. Everyone gets to know their neighbors. And when there's a future pandemic, hopefully not, we would know our neighbors. We would be able to help one another because we've been connecting all along. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev. Okay, same question over to Sarah Hamilton.
Can you repeat the question in full, please? Thanks.
Absolutely. So you have 2 minutes to answer. What does your ideal neighborhood look and feel like? And what is your vision for your ward?
Thank you. You know, I think Bev touched on something fundamental about what an ideal neighborhood looks like. And I mentioned this in my response to Paths for People. An ideal neighborhood looks like a place where you can access the resources, the amenities that you need without having to get in a car if you don't want to. So within a walking distance or biking distance from your home, you can find a daycare, you can find friends and family, you can access groceries, a cafe, even recreation. And that's part of, I think, the vision for 15-minute communities. How do we get there? Or I think that zoning plays a huge part in that. And I think that being knowledgeable about how zoning and land use factors into our communities and how we shape our communities is a really important thing that counselors, potential counselors, have to understand about building you know, a vibrant, thriving city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Giselle General. Same question. What does your ideal neighborhood look and feel like? And what is your vision for your ward?
So for me, what an ideal neighborhood looks like is proximity and belonging. So in the small mining village where I grew up, my family was a store owner where children buy candy and moms buy fabric for the uniforms for the kids, if you know what I mean. And I think there's a lot of potential to make that happen here in the city. You know, I live in a mature neighborhood where there's a butcher shop, there's a convenience store, and there's a massage therapy office. And the different options that we can do as a municipality to make that a reality. There has been reference already to it. Zoning is definitely very important so that we can strategically and meaningfully integrate higher density or more utilized spaces used by more people, but seamlessly. Infrastructure is an important component as well, and also our social structures, particularly here in Edmonton. Community leagues can also play a big role in making sure that we have all the services and the things that we need and desire within close proximity to where we live. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and last for this round, we have Tim Cartmell. 2 minutes.
Thank you. So my ideal neighborhood, I guess, is the first part of the question. And so I would suggest that an ideal neighborhood has a number of things in balance, that it has amenities in close proximity. And those amenities would include, those things that you need to access, that you need to get to in your everyday life, in your everyday ordinary life, places of employment and education and entertainment. Our city plan talks about 15-minute neighborhoods. And so from the perspective of all those things are available within a 15-minute walk or bike ride from your front door, that begins to model our ideal neighborhood. And so I compare that idealized neighborhood to the various neighborhoods that are in Ward Pihêsiwin. And so my vision for parts of Ward Pihêsiwin that are more mature, and I would include the and more established communities, such as the one I live in, those neighborhoods tend to be predominantly single-family homes. So the neighborhood I live in, Radigan Ridge, is 95% single-family homes. We don't have that balance and spectrum of housing choices that would allow multi-generations to stay in their neighborhood. I think to a future when I won't need this home as big as it is, and I would like to stay in my community, but there's not a lot of options for that. There's not a lot of smaller places to migrate to. In the same way, in our newer neighborhoods, we may have more of a spectrum of housing, but what we don't have is those amenities within that 15-minute journey. We don't have enough recreation space for our youth, and particularly our adolescent youth, and particularly in the newer neighborhoods. We need to change that, and I think we need to examine our recreation facility plan to support that. But turning to an infill perspective, I think we often think of infill as was mentioned at the beginning, as that lot splitting two skinny houses up to that 6-story walk up that is put into a new established neighborhood. What we don't talk very much about is non-residential infill. So if we're going to, as we modify and adapt our established neighborhoods into having more people, more living units, we're also going to need to support them with those amenities in that units. In other words, we need to start talking a little bit about commercial infill as well to support that residential infill. So
thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
We'll get back to you in just a moment. I'm going to move on to the next question now, and I'll start with you, Bev. So the previous question was about the vision for your neighborhood and for your wards. So now I'd like you to talk a little bit and dive deeper into how you would achieve that vision. So if you could delve into some implementation and tactics, that will be your task for the next 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Well, I would need a magic wand. No, but I don't have one. So it's going to be working with my colleagues to try to move our dial. I think the zoning bylaw renewal is going to be key to help us plan out newer neighborhoods or the renewal of many of the current neighborhoods that we have in place. And I think we really need to engage the community to figure out how we want to move forward. Moving towards those 15-minute districts, I think some of the things we're going to have to work, and I appreciate Tim's comment about commercial infill, because we're going to have to find where are the gaps in neighborhoods and how do we attract businesses to those areas? How do we attract people to come in? We want schools that are live and vibrant, so we need a range of housing. So I think we need to work with those who provide infill development to encourage more infill development. And often what we hear is infill development isn't always affordable. So we're going to have to make sure that we're working towards those options, whether it's an infill property that has a garden suite or a garage suite, so that we have a range of different housing types in a particular neighborhood. But in order to do that, there's also some challenges that infill's facing, and we'd love to see those multi-generational homes. We'd love to see infill, but that means that the city, we're going to have to look at our own systems. Have we overregulated? Have we got too many permits? Is it taking too long? How do we enable that to happen? And I think the other thing is, how do we work with neighborhoods to welcome people? I had a situation once where a lady who built an infill property was afraid to move in. And she goes, do you think I should just sell it and not move there? Because will the community welcome my children? it really reminded me how it's about building neighborhoods for people. And we have to work with people, whether it's the current community or the future neighbors, to kind of support that.
Thank you, Bev. I appreciate your response. Okay, next we're going to move over to Sarah Hamilton to answer the same question about how would you achieve your vision. If you could speak a little bit about implementation and tactics.
Sure. I think Bev touched on the zoning bylaw renewal, which I think will be a very powerful opportunity for the next council. So I won't go into that. For me, flexibility within existing zones will be a tool that the next council can look at to expand the possibilities within our neighborhoods. Something else that I've talked about is making it easier for permitting and development. And we've probably heard in the last 2 decades about making it easier to do business with the city of Edmonton and get permits. But I think that there's an opportunity to break apart the customer service piece and the regulatory piece of that process, so that if you're trying to put infill in a neighborhood, you're getting your permits a lot faster, and the regulatory part, which is really important, is still upheld, but perhaps by a different part of the city. I also think that we need to look again at our joint use agreements, as well as our tripartite agreements with community leagues. Our schools and community leagues are really powerful institutions and community hubs within our communities, and there's an opportunity to collaborate with them or find multiple uses on those sites to create that kind of connection within existing neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll go to Giselle General. Same question for you, and you have 2 minutes.
One important component to help realize the city's vision of infill is addressing points of conflict and misconceptions. When door knocking, there's a lot of misconceptions or just like reasons why current residents have so much resentment towards infill. So part of it can be the architecture of these structures that are being built, for lack of a better word, like bad actors, construction staff that are very inconsiderate towards the adjacent homes and, not managing sidewalk access properly. So those things really need to be addressed in order for the idea of infill to be more embraced by neighborhoods that rightfully really need more of it. Another point of opportunity, based on the other meeting I attended with the Accessibility Advisory Committee, is having infill that also addresses shortage of homes that are 100% accessible and visitable. So, that a wheelchair user can just go in and visit with no issues. I think there's a lot of opportunities there because there is a shortage of housing types. So that could be a way to have a win-win situation, basically. And one other angle as well that is, I don't think it hasn't really been talked a lot, and that's the issue or reality of roommates. I have a house with 4 bedrooms and 3 adult roommates. So there's opportunity there in terms of densification and having more residents within a particular home or neighborhood block. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll go over to Tim Cartmell to talk about how you would plan to achieve your vision.
Thank you. So I just touching on some of the earlier comments, there's a need for some balance in permitting and regulation and sort of that red tape piece but also that is counterbalanced by protecting the neighbors and the community that is receiving an infill development. I think there's something to be had there. And I know that we've had those conversations at council with IDEA before. Really what we're talking about, I think, is the evolution of an established community. And so when I think of the established communities in Ward Pihêsiwin, they are just starting to see some of those lot splits and some of those skinny homes. And, they are quite resistant to those things. And I think really it's a fear of change kind of a thing. So I do think there's a respect the community piece there. I commented earlier about our rec center philosophy and the mega rec center philosophy. And this speaks to sort of neighborhood recreation, in my view, that we need to change our focus. We need to break those mega rec centers up into parts and distribute the parts into various neighborhoods. But when we're talking about established neighborhoods, that might mean the adaptive reuse and evolution of the school building that might not be as full as it used to be, but might be adaptively reused to provide some of those recreation spaces and opportunities. And finally, I think we should rethink, our multi-unit residential infills. I think if we make that the first floor of those buildings commercial, and further that we offer an opportunity for those that are in that infill multi-unit residential building, the first opportunity to establish a business or a mercantile opportunity on the main floor of that building, that we begin to solve both problems and perhaps provide that step up or step in that some might need to get started on an entrepreneurial career. So I think there's a number of things that we can not only do to enhance infill, but how we can leverage infill to address some of the other things we want to see in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that well-timed response. Okay, last for this question, we have Guiscela, over to you for 2 minutes.
Thank you. I think other than what people have said already, I think change, it always comes with resistance, but over the last 18 months, we have been forced to change rapidly. And I think also change brings new challenges, but also new opportunities. And that's what infill can bring. And I think that city can do is education and bring more awareness about what the infill is, not just the skinny homes, is as we have talked, commercial infill, multi-housing, and be more provide more affordable housing for all Edmontonians. So it's not just about just one type of infill, and I think education can play a huge role on that to break those misbeliefs that the people think and resistance so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to leapfrog from this question to a related question. And that is, how would you balance community and industry priorities around infill and urban redevelopment? So how would you handle basically the tension that sometimes arises between new development and the fear of change? As a counselor, what are some strategies that you would use to address that challenge? And I'll start with Sarah Hamilton.
I think over the last 4 years, we've heard of really successful infill developments of various scales, whether from housing at the single family house level to I'll say commercial multifamily development. And something that, in my experience, has been the recipe for success is collaboration with the community. I found that most of the time when a community comes to a public hearing and says we support this, it's because they were literally brought in on the ground floor. But I don't think that that's a really easy thing for a lot of infill developers who may also be learning their own trade at the same time to navigate. So something I think the city can do. Years ago, there was a public engagement initiative, and I think that there's an opportunity to work with the planning and development department to provide infill developers with a guide for how to engage with the community successfully. I think that something that we heard with the city plan was how important it was to communicate the vision of the city that we're trying to build, and to make sure that we make space for everybody's ideal Edmonton in that. And for some people, it's life in a single family home with their family and their pets. And for others, it's multifamily. And yet for others, it's about having a thriving business. So making space for the different visions of what our city is and what it can be is also, I think, fundamental to having successful infill development and balancing community priorities and frankly, what people cherish about their own neighborhoods and their own communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next to answer this question, I'll go to Giselle General.
Just so I'm on the right frame of mind, can you please repeat the question? Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. How would you balance community and industry priorities around infill and urban redevelopment?
I believe what I can do as an elected representative is to be present and be a proactive liaison and conduit of communication. One thing that I have heard on the doors is that there are many times when residents feel blindsided by upcoming changes that are happening in their neighborhoods, whether they haven't gotten good communication from the stakeholders that are involved, so whether it's companies or the city itself or their elected representative. And yeah, that it really causes a lot of stress and resentment. I know I've used that word a lot, but it's something that I have observed whenever there's conversations about infill. So it's about managing that and making sure that people are heard. I've also heard from different industries that ambiguity can really derail projects. So having clear timelines, easy to use toolkits, numbers, they communicate with numbers. This is how many days it takes for this permit to be approved. And it is delayed X number of days because this thing happened. So just being very, very clear is would I think help balance the different needs. And this is a bit of a side note, but I think it's also worth mentioning from a newcomer's perspective. It's really important to have better conversations on what does it take to actually be quote unquote successful in Canada. Like the vision of the Canadian dream is having a big single family home that's like 3 stories with a big backyard. But perhaps through engagement and education, showcasing that there are different ways to have a successful and beautiful life in Canada with different types of home structures that you're living in can actually help have neighborhoods that are thriving with all different types of home settings. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, next we'll go to Tim Cartmell.
Thank you. So I think that it's been sort of touched on, but I think that what this comes down to is communication and collaboration, and perhaps understanding what each of the parties' goals are. And so we talked, or it was said in the question, balancing community priorities with industry priorities. But I think there's 2 sets to community. There's the community writ large, the city of Edmonton, which has ambitious goals around energy transition and density and leveraging our fixed assets to greater effect. To essentially lower the cost of operating our city by pursuing those things. There's the community on the small scale that wants to see the architectural nature of their community respected, and to be a bit provocative about it and build on what Giselle was saying. There's this notion in more established communities that might be that 4,000 square foot home, that 75-foot wide lot, that is what people were taught success looked like. And so a lot of our conversation often is challenging that notion of success, but with an element of shaming those people into thinking that that isn't success anymore. So I think how we communicate with people is really important as we continue on this evolution. And then industry priorities, I touched on this earlier. There's this balance that industry is trying to achieve between the right amount of regulation and regulation in the right places that protects the people around the project, but at the same time is streamlined enough to let industry partners affordably and effectively deliver those projects. They are governed by a profit motive, let's be clear, for the most part. They need to make $1 when they build these projects, and at the same time, keep their projects affordable so that people can actually enter into them. So there's a number of elements to balance there. It's best met by making sure we all understand each other's priorities and then coming to some common ground and moving from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go over to Guiscela Perez. Same question.
Thank you. I think everybody has already say a little bit of what I was thinking, but I think collaboration between the community and the builders, the communication, proper information, also to the builders to see how the permits are going and all the regulation is going to start the project and to go through it. And also the communication to the communities, as Giselle said, to let them know what's going on in the neighborhood before they feel blindsided. And most important, accountability and listen, not only the voice of the rich and the privileged, but also the voices of all Edmontonians, those ones that live in multifamily homes or have roommates or have an accessibility and live with a disability. So I think we need to listen to all of those voices to make any decision in the city level.
Thank you very much. Last answer for this round is Bev Esslinger.
Thank you very much. And it's been a good conversation because really, it truly is about to balance that tension or that fear of change is really about communication. We've talked about that. So I think the engagement is really key. And the city has developed toolkits. I think of street labs where they're giving toolkits to address traffic safety within neighborhoods. So if we had some toolkits, perhaps that community leagues or parts of communities can take forward to help them work with developers. Some developers are really good at engaging the community and making them understand what's happening and to be able to compromise and get what will satisfy everybody's vision for the neighborhood. Some need some more work at that. And so perhaps the toolkit would help both sides understand how to talk to each other. Because there's some great examples. I remember when I was first elected, infill was like this 4-letter word. And now it's evolved to be something that many people are very proud of and excited to see come into the neighborhoods. And as we progress, the only way we'll do that is if we do it together. So I think we really need to have that opportunity for us to work together. And maybe just additional tools for people, because a lot of people, they don't realize what it is until it comes to a neighborhood near them. And so I think it's important to give those new neighbors who've never experienced infill perhaps just some tools or some good questions they need to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, with the time that we have left, I'm going to try to squeeze in 2 more questions. So I'm going to cut your time now from 2 minutes to 90 seconds. The next question, and we'll start with Giselle on this one, is what is your take on housing affordability? Is it a problem in Edmonton? And if so, what would you do about it?
From what I've heard in the doors and looking at the numbers, affordability is definitely an issue. And I'm actually going to tie it to with accessibility. So, talk to people who, family of like 2 wheelchair users and would like to just have a simple like single family home, and they cannot find a single house that meets their needs. So I think that really needs to be addressed hand in hand. I'm not an economist, and I'm also, to be frank, I'm someone from the outside looking in. So what I'm hoping when I get elected is that if I get access to more data that is available and identify ways to make housing affordable, whether it's providing appropriate incentives to appropriate industries and other options to make sure that every single person in Edmonton, regardless of their family composition, will be able to have a safe home, safe, accessible, comfortable place to live in, because housing is a right and we all deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Giselle. Okay, same question over to Tim Cartmell. So what's your take on housing affordability? Is it a problem in Edmonton? And if so, what would you do about it?
Well, I do think it's a problem in Edmonton. I think that, just generally speaking, when we look at affordability and look at the metrics around that, we see that we have need for well over 50,000 affordable units in the city of Edmonton when measured against how much, a household might pay for housing just on its own. So there's a number of elements to that. I don't have time to dive into a bunch of different options, but one thing that we used to do at the City of Edmonton was something called the First Choice Program, where we at the City of Edmonton would waive fees or absorb some of the costs of a particular building, entry cost to a particular building, so as to get younger families and those that need a bit of assistance to get into that living unit and then get out and get started and get a more affordable mortgage. So that's just one element of a set of strategies that might be something we revisit. I believe that was called the First Choice Program. Like I said, we've moved away from that in favor of other programs, but perhaps it's time to return to something like that.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we'll go to Guiscela Perez.
Thank you. I think it is a problem, and I think a lot of the time it does not only come to the minimum wage ones. Sometimes we fall in the middle of you don't apply for you do a little bit more than the low income, so you can no longer apply to all those support programs around. So there still need to be affordable housing there, and it is a problem even for like the little ones that are doing a little bit more of the low income salary. I think fees and taxes and municipal costs, it is a huge impact in housing. And I think you guys have the answer in your hands, because infill and bringing density more into the neighborhoods will lower those costs about the services that we provide to the city. And by that, we can have a diversity of housing available for all Edmontonians, and at the same time bringing new families and new opportunities for the city.
Thank you for your answer. Okay, next we'll go over to Bev Esslinger.
Thank you very much. Is housing affordability a problem? Absolutely. Many people are struggling to find the affordable housing when and where they want it. So it's really important for a city to have a range of housing options in every corner of the city. And I think it's essential that we look at the different options. You know, we need to explore everything from tiny houses and garden suites to 4- and 6-story buildings where we can build in more affordable units for people. And I think we can do that with community conversation. But often many neighborhoods, some in my ward, they're all the same. It's all a single family. There's not a lot of diversity. And so change is challenging. And so knowing that we have to move forward, maybe it's starting with secondary streets and suites and moving forward. I think we have to be open to all types of developments, and we have to promote that as a potential. And I think there's an opportunity for us to provide more homes for more people. The other thing is sometimes we don't have enough housing that has enough bedrooms for many of the large families. So we have to think, is it a family? How many children they have? We need a range of size of units as well as more units. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, last on this round is Sarah Hamilton. Same question with regard to housing affordability. Is it a problem in Edmonton? And if so, what way do you do about it?
I think it is actually a problem. It's actually a problem across Canada. I read every day in the paper issues across this country dealing with housing affordability. I think it's important that we break apart the question. When we talk about affordable housing, we're talking about 3 different kinds of affordable housing. We're talking about middle class affordability, we're talking about below market value, and we're talking about permanent supportive housing. And as a city councillor on this council, I've been proud to support the construction of hundreds of new permanent supportive housing units. I think we have to, if we pivot back to that middle class housing question, how do we keep housing affordable for the middle class? We have to look at things like the cost of construction, break down permitting, including OSCAM, and how that impacts the cost of housing. And we have to streamline our own processes as a city. Looking at flexibility within zones to allow different types of occupancy. Creativity with built form, as Bev mentioned, is extremely thoughtful. And I think a big one is advocacy to other orders of government. If we're going to have a robust and sustainable middle class in Canada, we have to, as city councillors, we have the ability to communicate with our federal and provincial counterparts about what we see on the ground.
Thank you very much. Okay, so for our last round now, what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a choice and you can choose one of 3 questions. And then I'm going to bump your time back up to 2 minutes. So then you have a little bit of time to give a closing statement about yourself if you choose to do that. So that will take us pretty much right to 1 o'clock. So the 3 choices that I will give you, and Tim, I'll just give you a heads up. I'm going to start with you. Your choices are: what do you think are the barriers to infill development and how might we address them? Second choice, what do you consider to be the top policy direction in city plan, and how will you support the implementation of that policy? And then the third choice is, what would you do to help us see more growth in medium scale housing, sometimes referred to as the missing middle? I'll read them one more time. So what do you think are barriers to infill development, and how might we address them? What do you consider to be the top policy direction in city plan, and how will you support the implementation of that policy? And what would you do to help us see more growth in medium scale housing, sometimes referred to as the missing middle? Okay, so 2 minutes, over to you, Tim.
Okay, I'm gonna try and hit them all. Biggest barrier to infill, existing infrastructure, the size and capacity of the water system, the power system, the gas system, the sewer system. And typically it's been put on, the burden of improving that and bringing those up has been put on the next development as opposed to a citywide scale. Typically those things are utilities. They can be worked into rate filings, and everyone contribute to a gradual upgrading of the whole system. Missing middle. We very recently saw a change in codes from 4 stories to 6-story buildings out of wood frame. That makes 6-story buildings far more affordable than they used to be, far more executable. Our regulations and our planning and development documents and regulations need to follow that. Most important part of the city plan is the 15-minute community and everything that goes with it. Play space, park space, workspace, recreation space, schools, amenities, childcare. Your most important resource is your time. If you have time back, if you can do those things in your community, you get time back. There's parts of this word where you need to get in your car to change your mind. We need to fix that. And I would suggest that finally, as a bit of a wrap-up statement, again, 30-year career in building buildings, 30-year career in doing infrastructure projects and infill projects. I think I hit the ground running after the next election. I think I can support this industry, and in so doing, support my community, my city, and my ward. So thank you very much again for the opportunity. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Okay, next we'll go over to Gisela. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I think all 3 questions are related. So I think it is more to tackle 3 of them. So the city plan is to have 50% of infill, and I think that's the answer for the missing middle and the 15 minutes community. If we allow remove that much red tape, but at the same time keep in mind the regulations are being met, we can have that that missing middle for more affordable houses for just that middle class, and at the same time achieve the city plan. I think, as I say, change comes always with resistance, but it brings new opportunities and new challenges with it. But I believe we have been forced to change rapidly, and I think that's our only constant. The change is in our past, present, and it will be in our future. Infill also brings the opportunity to bring more climate resistant buildings, and we see old houses with old windows that they need to be replaced because they're no longer energy efficient. So the infill and new development will bring that to our city, and we're already living in a climate crisis. So by tackling all of that at the same time, it's helping all to one purpose. I think representation and accountability matters, and I think I embrace change with it. So I think infill is a good answer to those all those answers. Thank you for having me today, and looking forward to work with you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we'll go over to Bev Esslinger. Same set of questions for you.
Thank you. They are a little interconnected. What are the barriers to infill? I think some of the barriers to infill is city permitting and the time it takes and the cost it takes. And we find new ways to add new permits from time to time. And I think we get in our own way. So I think we need to really evaluate how we work together. Is there better ways to do it with technology? I think we're able to move forward, increase the process, improve it so that the timelines are well known, that the costs are, builders know going into how they're going to build, what it's going to cost. And if we can address that, I think it's going to help a bit on the affordability side. Look at the city plan, we want to do 50% infill throughout the process. And if we're going to do that, we may better find better ways to do it, better ways to work together, identify those barriers. I think Tim mentioned some of the ways we can do it, but I think it's really key for us to find those ways if we're going to find a city that is full of infill, is multimodal. It's our plan, and we need to invest in it wisely. I guess the last area is, if we're talking about the missing middle, it seems to have been such a challenge to get that developed in our city, and maybe we have to incentivize that in some way to help get that started, so that people realize that it's an opportunity, that's an asset to communities, and it's a way to densify, bring more families in, keep schools open, enrich our community. So I think there's many ways to do. I believe my experience at City Council and my knowledge will help us, as Tim would say, hit the ground running. But my commitment to build a strong city for the future is where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we'll go to Sarah Hamilton.
Thank you, Chelsea. I think Bev and Tim covered some of the things we've talked about really well today. The barriers to infill development, I'm repeating myself, but we need better permitting, and we need more transparency in the permitting process, so that developers who may not be as familiar with the city know exactly when they can expect to be in business, essentially. I 100% agree. I think the top policy in the city plan is the 15-minute community. And I believe it's the top policy because it captures our imagination of what our community, not only what our community is, but what it could be. And I've been working on building stronger community connections, so that stronger community connections, as well as changes in potential changes in land use, so that we can see some of those early wins on building those connections within communities. I also think flexibility in permitting and zones will help us get there faster. Now, when we talk about that missing middle question, I think, Chelsea, of the design competition that the city of Edmonton held a few years back in having architects from around the city submit their vision for what the missing middle built form could be. And I loved that competition because it asked us to consider built form, which we don't often get to do as city councilors. We're looking at land use, we're not looking at design, but it captured a lot of people's imagination. And I know you participated in it. I thought that that was a really creative way of reaching out to Edmontonians and sharing a vision for what built form could look like in our communities. I'll just do a brief sort of reintroduction of myself. I'm Sarah Hamilton. I'm the current city councilor for Ward 5. I'm running in Ward Sipiwiyiniwak, and I want to thank IDEA for having this forum today. A really great discussion on housing and infill and affordability, and what our city is and what our city could be. And I look forward to working with you to make that happen. Thanks.
Thank you. We appreciate your time. Okay, wrapping up, we have Giselle General.
Many of the barriers to infill have already been discussed, but a big one that I really want to emphasize is what I would describe as bad actors. For something like a very contentious issue like infill, like reputation is really, really important. And it's really valuable to find ways to hold people accountable for doing, inappropriate actions that really negatively affect residents, because that reputation spreads and people would resist infill even more, something I've heard a lot at the doors. And when it comes to the city plan, 15-minute districts, absolutely, I really resonate with the concept. I mean, there's even a book published called Edmonton's Urban Villages, that reference Edmonton as a cluster of different small villages that are connected together, which I think is really great. There's so much potential in there. And when it comes to missing middle, there's two things I'd like to mention, which is I think there's a lot of potential to making these types of structures be more like senior friendly and accessibility friendly. Like maybe that can capture the imagination of architects and builders and incentivize these types of structures being built more, providing more incentivizing opportunities, and also education. Because like I mentioned, in many ways, I'm an everyday Edmontonian. Even the term missing middle sounds really too technical. So I remember an interview done by IDEA. Storytelling is an important component of spreading information and addressing misconceptions about infill. And yeah, just like a quick plug. Again, my name is Giselle General. I am a challenger running for City Council for Ward Sipiwiyiniwak, and I've lived and I continue to live the experiences of everyday Edmontonians, and that's what I bring to City Council if elected. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to all of you. We really appreciate your time. We know that this is a very busy time for you right now. So we appreciate that you came on to share your perspectives with IDEA and our members here today. Again, we had Tim Cartmell, Guiscela Perez, Bev Esslinger, Sarah Hamilton, and Giselle General, and the Edmonton municipal election is on October 18th. With that, I will hand it over to Mariah to wrap up.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate thank you to all the candidates who came out today and working through a power outage, which, unforeseen things happen, but we clearly have wonderful candidates in Edmonton that are able to pivot and make things happen. IDEA put on this panel today and election week because we believe in building Edmonton together. And so thank you to all those who joined us as spectators. This is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website so that candidates can share it out, as well as more people can get to know all of the wonderful people running in our municipal election. Tomorrow is the last day of our election week for our mayoral panel. So if you haven't already signed up, please do. I urge you to look at all of the candidates' websites as you make your vote on October 18th and check out our website because we've created a lot of information around what is city plan, what is infill, and what do candidates believe and think about infill. So have a great day. Thank you for letting me take one more minute of your time and enjoy the weather today. See you all soon. Bye.